Here's another example of a research database. This is the one that Saddleback College uses. This is one that is used at Santiago Canyon College and Fullerton College Library Database. And if you are accessing the database from off campus, you need to enter in your username and password. And here are two descriptions of databases. And there are many databases out there, so here are some points to consider when you are using databases. Is my subject covered in this database? Does it cover the time period I'm interested in? For whom is the database designed? These are some of the more general ones that you should be familiar with: Academic OneFile and EBSCOhost and JSTOR. I want to persuade you to be careful when you use Google. You're going to get a ton of responses when you do a search. They're often not professionally identifiable or edited sources. I do want to suggest using bookmarking tools when you're doing searches, but you always want to find authoritative online sources. Here's some examples. And the Google Scholar tool is a really cool tool that will be helpful, I think, for many of you. Instead of going out and doing the research, you set up the Google Scholar tool. It's a free tool, and you are sent sources that are pertinent to your subject. Of course, interviewing and conducting surveys is another option when you're doing field research. And really important is these techniques when evaluating sources. So avoid using Wikipedia because this source is subject to change by the users that create it. And edu is by and large more reliable than a .com. .com stands for commerce. So oftentimes the organization is trying to sell you something. Consider your purpose, if the sources you found are relevant to your purpose, and the level of specialization and audience. Maybe you found something that's far too specialized for me, the instructor, me or another instructor, or maybe it's too low. So that's kind of your call. The credentials of the publisher or sponsor, you always want to look for someone that has some expertise or some kind of credibility that backs up what they say. And the date of publication, the accuracy of the source, the stance of the source, and the cross references to the source or other people referring to this important source. Your textbook, The Everyday Writer, goes into further detail about evaluating web sources, and as does on page 214, it discusses evaluating articles. While you're working on your paper, you need to be focusing on creating a working bibliography, and so these are kind of the more typical resources that people rely on: a print book, a part of a book, a periodical article, or electronic source. And you've put all this work into finding these sources, but you really need to spend time synthesizing them. So that involves reading the material carefully. You don't want to just randomly drop in a quote. You want to really sit with what you found and ruminate over it. Determine the important ideas in each source. See relationships and patterns between the sources. So try to do some cross-pollination. Find evidence to support your position, deal with counterarguments, and combine source material effectively. Finally, it takes some skill to integrate the sources you found gracefully. So when you quote, summarize, or paraphrase, you need to give an internal citation, write the name of the author and the page number. And make sure you do a lead-in as well. Which means you do smooth integration. Sandwiching a quote is an analogy that some people use, where you first name the author, where it came from. You use a signal verb like states, and then you begin your quote. but you don't want to go overboard on using source materials. So maybe 25%, 20% of your paper is secondary resources tops. And of course, you want to take some time to go back and make sure that you are using correct MLA documentation.